Well, hello, Michael. How are you?
I'm good, Wendy. A bit tired, but I'm okay. How are you?
Amazing. I'm amazing. Thank you for joining me today.
No worries at all.
So you and I have something in common. We used to work at AWS together, and that was a fun experience. And this week you're here for AWS Summit.
I am, yes. Got in yesterday from Singapore for AWS Summit. 2 big days across Sydney, so 5,000 or 6,000 people. So it'll be a great event and really showcasing what we're doing as Nutanix, as well as what AWS are doing in the broader ANZ community. So it's a lot of fun.
So I'm actually planning to be there on the Thursday.
Excellent.
So I'm looking forward to seeing familiar faces and getting a bit of the buzz of, what's the latest and the greatest.
Yes.
So I'm excited to talk to you because having both of us worked at AWS, we have probably a very similar style of operating in the workplace. But something that doesn't get talked about often is when you get over-included in conversations, in meetings, in strategies, and what impact that has on you as a leader and as an individual contributor, but also exclusion, the inverse of that. So I invited you to this conversation because I feel like that you've probably got a really strong insight into the ins and outs of how people feel on that topic. Yeah,
and, AWS gives you, I think, a very different way of leading as opposed to everywhere that I have worked before. I came from Dell and HP where I had leadership roles, but so I thought I was experienced when I came to Amazon, but it was a very big learning curve, a different learning curve, some of which now that I've left, I still use every day today, and some of which we sort of not so much on a daily basis. But as you're looking to progress your career, 2 things that can often come up and will is over-inclusion, whether it's by yourself or a leader, or exclusion. And I really wanted to start with exclusion. I see a lot of people feel like they're being excluded, and from that point, it's a little bit about you. And I talk a lot about advocacy here, and it's really important that you can go out and find a champion within yourself for yourself, and that takes a lot of people outside of their comfort zone.
Can you give the listeners just a quick snapshot of your background in terms of your career background and some of the path that you've followed? Has it been a sales path, an engineering path, a marketing programs path? Yeah,
I found myself going through the traditional tech route up. So started on a help desk and worked my way up through there. Then I moved over from a lead architect role into an engineering manager, pre-sales engineering manager. And that was a big change, a really big change. I often find on the technical side that when you're moving from an IC, either in an architectural or engineering path, into a managerial role, it's a huge change. You're not hands-on keyboard anymore. You stop doing the thing that you love that gave you passion. And then from there, I moved over into leading delivery teams across Asia. That was with HPE. And then I moved to Dell, where I ran pre-sales across APJ. And then moved from there to run VMware Cloud on AWS as a sales leader for AWS.
You just said something that triggered me, and I like to take the conversation where it leads. You're leading me in a different direction. You said that when you transitioned from hands-on tools into leadership, I guess this ties into that feeling of losing control.
Yes.
Which in a way is a way of learning how to exclude yourself from putting your finger in every single pie. So. I see people who are really exceptional sellers, they become sales managers, and then they don't know how to lead teams. They don't know how to exclude and when to exclude themselves.
Correct.
So I want to tap into that first. Let's talk a little bit about that transition from IC into leadership.
Yeah, exclusion is 100% nail on the head. And you think about it, when you progress through that journey up through the IC paths and, you start on the help desk and you end up being a lead engineer or a lead architect, something like that, you're at the top of your game. you should be technically or in sales or marketing, you're really good. So when you now take responsibility of a team, you've got to figure out how to exclude yourself, how to distance yourself from the day-to-day operations of the staff members that you're trying to mentor and lead, and more guiding. So how am I going to set a framework for them to be successful? How did I become successful doing what I'm doing, and impart that knowledge, as opposed to my biggest, I won't say regret, but the biggest challenge I had to do was to step away from taking ownership and taking over work. So I would then exclude my staff.
So in terms of, I guess I'm just trying to think about all the questions that I've been asked when I've been asked to mentor.
Yeah.
People are so scared to let go.
To let go, yeah.
They're thinking, oh, but if I don't stay involved in every single thing, like every single POC, every single deal, then I'm going to be a fraud. It's like, how do you get past that?
You figure out how you were successful, and then that needs to be your guiding light for everyone else underneath. And the team will then be drawn to success. And you have to not so much worry about failure. And I think fear of failure as a first-time leader is what drives everybody to take over so much ownership, hands-on, with their staff. It's the biggest thing. And you've got to learn to say, okay, you know what? They can do it. They can. And they may not be at exactly the level you want them to be at or where you were previously.
Yeah.
But that's your role now. Your role is to say, hey, you've done 80%. I would have structured the document like this. Or this is how I handle deliverables. Or this is what I do in a steerco with a customer to make sure that we have all the success criteria and things like that. So just think about what made you successful and then guide everybody toward that light, as opposed to sitting in on every meeting, doing every piece of sizing, every delivery review. You're there to be the escalation. You're not going to fail. There's people that will help you. The team, ultimately, they want to be successful as well. So I think take the fear of failure out of it is probably the first step.
Okay, so one of the notes that you and I exchanged in preparation for this week, you wrote something in there that really resonated with me. You talked about that when you actually then move into that leadership role, there's something different that happens as a leader, and the type of exclusion where you pull away from your peers.
Yes.
And that feeling of all of a sudden they perceive you as different, they behave differently towards you. This has definitely happened to me, both in a promotion but also moving from an IC into a leader role. Can you talk me through what you meant in those notes?
Yeah, when you move into a leadership role as opposed to an IC, and you're probably in the same or a similar team before, you may have one or two people that will still treat you the same as you were, but the other people, someone will have resentment, because let's face it, if it's an internal promotion, somebody else would have gone for that role. So you could have some resentment coming from one side. You could have, well, he's the manager now, so we can't go and have lunch on a Friday, or we can't go and do the little social things that we used to do, so we can't do that. So I think you've got to figure out, one, what's your new peer network, which is really important to start building out. So you should have, when you went for that promotion or that move up, you should have already started to put out some feelers and be building your network with peer leaders.
I think it sounds easy, but in reality...
Oh, it sounds super easy.
People who sign up for mentorships, I see there's a couple of failure points.
Yeah.
The first one is that they don't know how to select a mentor.
Yes.
They pick somebody that's senior. Wow, like I like Michael's personality. He smiles.
Cool. Yeah.
He looks very approachable. Yeah. He's so aspirational. I want him to be my mentor.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you going to get out of that mentorship? Yeah. I don't think people think about the actual skill set that they're trying to gain.
Yeah.
So when you just talked about the just go in and talk to a mentor about X, Y, Z, I think that part is something that they don't think about.
No, they don't. And I'll be honest, I made that mistake.
Me too.
Myself personally, it was my first one. And I remember I went into it was a step up coming out of HP into Dell, into a much more senior leadership position. And I tapped on someone who was a SVP here in Australia. And I said, hey, I'm really looking for a mentor to help me guide. And he turned around and said, why? And I just, other than saying, because you're like the boss. I didn't have an answer. I really didn't. And he turned around to me and said, happy to do it, always happy to do it, but you got to come to me with a plan. So and that's what I spent the next 4 weeks going, why do I really want this guy to be my mentor? Where do I want to go next? And how is this person going to help me? So it sounds really easy, but I did learn it from an SVP going, no, not until you have a plan.
Yeah, no, and not just that, it's also not really knowing when to break up with a mentor. I think that's also the awkward one that I've run into.
Yes, you just keep it going for the sake of keeping it going.
Yeah. So I think when you say you need a plan, you probably need to say, okay, I really want to go and learn or polish up my presentation skills, or I really want to polish up how to build a strategy. So find the person who's amazing at that and say, look, I just want 4 meetings with you. Ring fence it and say 3 meetings, and in the 3 meetings I'm going to talk about A, B, C and D, and then I'll release you. You know, like that way that nobody feels trapped. And
correct.
I don't want to be trapped.
No, and you going into a mentor and saying, hey, I really want to learn every aspect of how to run this business, they're going to sit there and say, look, probably not. So take it in bite size, apply like a DevOps mentality to how you want to learn. Sit in on a few leadership meetings and they'll say things like GRR, ARR, and you will go, I don't know what those things are. So pick a slice of the business that's brand new to you and say, we went through some terms on our leadership meeting, and I really want to get to understand how this side of the business works, because trying to learn everything at once is not going to work.
So Michael, a little bit earlier we were talking about exclusion, and I steered us in a different direction. But as a leader, can you give me some examples of observations that you've made where people are excluded, they feel offended, and they don't really know how to bring themselves back into the opportunity?
I think something very common that I see, and something that I experienced early in my career when I started out and we were in a team of ICs together, was that you may think that opportunity is not presented to you, whereas typically it's going to be presented at a broad brush. It's just knowing how to see it. So one example that I had for this was I was working somewhere and there was a group of us, and then some of us were starting to get moved into leadership positions or just be given more responsibility as opposed to a task list. Now, one of the people in that team, really, really solid technically, very, very astute person. And they, after 2 or 3 months, they felt like they were being excluded from everything that was happening in the promotions and the responsibility.
How did you know that they were...
very vocal back to me. Very vocal back to me. And we were a very
just like complaining behind the scenes, feeling... Do you think they were being a bit of a victim?
I do think they were.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that. But it showed in their work. Was the first thing everybody noticed. When you're turning up to meetings and you're really angry all the time, quality of work doesn't decrease, but your attitude changes significantly. And that was the first sign for a few of us that really noticed it was, and this was when we all used to go into the office, so it was a while ago, not being on time to work, something that we used to actually look at, what time do you get into the office? Your attendance in meetings, in team meetings, and your participation in those meetings. So the frustration for this person really started to show through. We discussed it as a group, and then we brought the person in and we said, look, you need to make a decision here as to what's going on with your attitude and how do you want to play this out? And they opened up and they said, I've been passed over for all these opportunities and I haven't been able to do this and haven't been able to do that. And then we sat down as a group and we said, well, Michael was put into this role because he had that on his career path and that's what he said he wanted to do. You don't have those discussions with me. Michael wanted to do this and these other 3-4 tasks outside of his current scope of work, and he took those on to show that if he was moved into that role, he could do it. So it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to be awesome at everything I'm doing right now. It was me stepping outside of my comfort zone. It was me taking on additional responsibilities outside of my current scope of work. And I embraced that and I didn't complain about it. And that's what I did. And that's why I got the promotion. Whereas the other person really played the victim, really got really angry. They felt like they were not given a fair chance when they hadn't really done anything other than what they would normally do, but they were expecting a lot more.
I think a lot of examples are coming to mind. I have an example of somebody who reported to me who their attitude was increasingly becoming more frustrated and more frustrated, but it's a little bit cancerous because what happens is that their peers start to notice, and then people beyond their peers, like the other departments, even other countries start to notice.
They'll see.
There's attitude even in the email tone and the short emails and conversations, and even not participating in meetings verbally, like not vocalising their thoughts, but then later complaining. So it is disappointing, and I mean, I have some advice around that space, but I'm interested in your advice. I mean, my first thoughts are, or my response to people is, people don't know what you want. If you don't tell them, then they don't know. Everyone's worrying about their own...
A marriage counselling session now as well,
It feels like a marriage counselling.
It is.
What's your advice?
Look, people... You're 100%. Your leader doesn't know where you want to take your career, what's next, what you want to do. They don't know if you're not vocal and don't come with a plan. And if you don't have a leader that's saying, let's have a career discussion every quarter, or when you're doing performance reviews and things like that, you should be asking the question. So in the end, if you get really frustrated and feel like you're being overlooked, you will get excluded because people will see your attitude. They will see that, oh, this person's not friendly. They don't have a good dialogue. I don't want to talk with them because they may deliver something, but it's not a great experience. So I'll find someone else out. So you'll end up being excluded, even though you probably weren't at the start. But you've got to start self-advocating, and you've got to build that career plan and roadmap. If a leadership role is where you want to go, you will not, in most cases, you will not just get a tap on the shoulder that we'd all love to say, hey, you've been doing a great job for 6 months. I want you to go and take over this team. That world doesn't exist.
No.
Just being awesome at your job is great. You're going to be awesome at your job. Well done. It doesn't guarantee a promotion in any world.
I also believe that people don't recognise when it's time to let go. In terms of not just let go of an opportunity lost, but also it's time for them to move either out of the company or out of the role. So they sit on that and they fester.
Yes.
They fester. And it's damaging to their own career and their reputation, but also to the company and the team around them.
A lateral movement can sometimes be just as good as a promotion. You can gain some completely different experience. I've bounced around between pre-sales, delivery, architecture, sales, and then incorporating that into a lot of other functions like business development and go-to-market. I've learnt so much by doing that. But a lot of the time, you can get stuck in a role. Maybe there's a lack of leadership opportunities because of your organisation size, or you're like AWS where you run really lean inside small teams. So you could get really stuck there. So I think taking it upon yourself to say, I really want to move into leadership. And I have some brilliant people and they say, I don't want to be leaders. I just want to be the best person at this in the world. Brilliant. Go for it. That's awesome. You've got your path. You know what it is you need to do to go and get there. Leadership and managing a team and managing people, because it's a completely different mindset. It's a change. That might not be on your career path, but that's great. You've defined what you want to do, and now we can put a plan in place so that you go and get it.
I'm a strong believer in lateral movements, actually. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I find that when I've made lateral moves, it's made me stronger.
Oh, yeah.
So now in a leadership role, and probably for yourself, you can speak from a position of experience and say, look, I have walked your shoes. Even if you did it for a brief time, for a year or 6 months, it's still experience that you can say, look, I've actually sat on your side of the fence. I empathise with the processes and the challenges that you're facing, the customer conversations that are going nowhere, or the ones,
exactly.
So yeah,
and you're going to organically build that network outside of your team. So if you're just in delivery at the moment, you probably don't interact with marketing, half of the sales team. Sales teams most of the time exclude delivery. They're just like, yeah, you guys will build it after we sell it. Just go do it.
And deliver that dream we promised.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And again, this for me, moving from a delivery leader into pre-sales and sales, my number one mantra was always, if we can't deliver it, you cannot sell it. Because I was there sleeping in the data center cursing whoever it was that sold this. It's not going to work unless we are rewriting code on the fly. So you can't deliver it, don't sell it. So laterally moving, it might add 12 months to your journey as you want to progress up into a more senior role, but it's going to be so much better. And in 2 or 3 years, you're going to look back and go, I'm really glad that I just went sideways.
One of the AWS lines that I'll never forget, that at least I don't know about you, but for me was, there's no compression algorithm for experience.
For experience, yes. I don't know if that's a Jassy one, but that one is...
I think it's a Jassy one,
It's perfect. It's absolutely
true,
perfect.
Though.
Yeah,
there's no compression algorithm for experience.
You can't. And it doesn't matter how many MBA books you read, and it's why I always laugh when you get grads coming in and they say, okay, well, I've just finished all this stuff. What are we actually doing in the real world? Nothing like that. It's nothing. Whatever you think you just studied, we don't do that at all. Oh, we're going to meet a client. Yep. Okay. What are we talking about? We're going to be talking about this. Yeah, but I've never discussed that in schooling at all. Yeah, you won't. So yes, hands-on experience is by far the best learning.
All right. So flip side. So let's talk about the inverse of that. So over-inclusion.
Yep.
So we know a lot about that,
yes.
but I'm interested to understand, can you start with an example of over-inclusion so people listening understand what we're talking about, and then the impact of that?
Yep. You can, I'll say from an individual's perspective, I think we touched on it as a leader, you can over-include yourself and then you won't deliver anything. You got to let go of that.
I think that's a bit of FOMO.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. If I look at people on that leadership journey, over-inclusion will be, I'll say it really bluntly, you putting yourself in more things than you need to be. Just don't do it. So if you find yourself saying, I have to go to this, or this is not going to work, or I have to be part of this journey, a lot of the times you don't, and you'll spread yourself way too thin and you won't end up delivering anything. So at the start, you might say, well, I'm going to deliver these 3 projects. They're all really similar. And you might handle that and you might be really successful in those 3. But then you add a 4th or a 5th, you're going to burn out really quickly. So,
do you think it's a form of insecurity?
Oh, yeah.
Where a person, and I see people get really offended when they're not invited to specific meetings. It's like, why wasn't I invited to that? Are you trying to run a project or run a deal without me? Mm-hmm. And they want to be involved in everything.
Every single meeting, every single email.
Copy me on everything.
Don't.
I'm the opposite.
Please don't do that.
Blind copy me once so I know that something's happening, and just don't come back to me.
Yeah. And that's the
Unless
whole
you're escalating.
Well, BCC is exactly there for that. And, the team that are with me now, they know, just put me on the CC. So it's in my inbox. That way I've got something to refer to if I ever need to. If I'm in the to or I need to action, tag me in it so that I know what my action needs to be. Otherwise, please don't. I think the best leadership principle that I took out of AWS was frugality. And I remember when I joined and we did all the Embark training, frugality, I'm going, wow, they're really cheap. What's this whole leadership around not spending money? But it's completely the opposite way. And you work in AWS for a while and you sit down and go, there are too many things. If I'm CC'd on everything, I'm not going to be able to be successful at all. So I took frugality on my time. And I said, I'm only going to schedule 25-minute meetings now. And if you don't come in with an agenda, I'm not going to participate. So being frugal with your time, because it's the most valuable resource you have, is going to set you up to be way more successful than getting copied in and being part of every single project. Learning how to say no.
I feel like that my biggest, the leadership principle that I liked the most was have backbone, disagree and commit, which I do.
Two ways to take that one, but yeah.
I think for me is it's a similar line of thinking to you. For me, it was around when you're included in a project or something that you're working on as a team or as a business. Sometimes there are disagreements. Yes. Actually, oftentimes there are disagreements.
We had a few, yeah.
But also knowing that, you know what, I'm going to stop wasting time. I'm going to be frugal with my time.
Yep.
I'm going to stop wasting time arguing the point, and I'm just going to agree that we disagree, and I'm going to have backbone and just commit.
And we're just going to get on with it.
Commit to just getting on with it. And that, I think those leadership principles, although we both don't work at AWS anymore, have actually taught me a lot. And it's something that I really like the way you positioned that, to be frugal. When I was looking at frugality, I was thinking about money.
Yes.
But when you associate it with be frugal with your time, it's much more powerful.
Oh, I don't know, maybe where it was developed from. I'm sure it was developed from the money side of thing, but if time was the initial thought they had with that leadership principle, that's how I adopted it, and I still use it today with everything I do. It's the perfect way to interpret frugality as a leadership principle. Yeah.
So how do you ensure that you stay included in the right stuff? Because you join Nutanix, you're a leader in the business, and you're across a really large portfolio and region. So for a listener, help guide, like how do you know what's important and what's not important?
Yeah, this is probably the one that I struggle with the most as a leader, and we all have flaws. Every leader is sitting there with self-reflection at the end of the week or at the end of the month when you look back with it. And it is really hard when you have a huge geography. I think a lot of people don't realise when you start adding in Southeast Asia into your portfolio of management, it's huge. There's so many countries, there's so many languages, everything is really complex from a business standpoint. So and then you add in Japan and Korea, and they're completely different to everything else.
You haven't even said India yet.
No, I'm not even going there yet.
That's another kettle of fish.
So when you add that in, it becomes a really complex daily moving parts that you have to look after. For me, in the leadership team that I sit on here at APJ level, it's really about understanding my stakeholders and where we are trying to move the business. So Nutanix is going through a really big shift at the moment, and our priorities, I won't say are changing. There are some that have stuck completely the same, but there are different priorities that the business and objectives that the business needs to see. So for me, it's really around just changing and tweaking the strategy to make sure that people around me are successful as well. Because if I meet all the KPIs that I give myself, well, that's fantastic. I'm going to look great. But I'm not going to bring anybody else along. And to be successful as a leader, it's not just about you hitting your KPIs and targets and OKRs. It's about bringing others on that journey and making them part of the success and making them successful as well. So trying to juggle that, it's really tough. But you've got to plan and understand the objectives of the wider team, and then really prioritise and be frugal after that and say, I can't do this. Or you may choose to, like from a macro level, we make choices to say, I can't support this market or this segment for 12 months until we have more staff. So it might just be the biggest decision you make is just, but to your point earlier, just letting go and saying, I can't do it now.
Somebody, I don't know who said this to me, but it did stick in my mind. Somebody said to me, you're always going to have to choose who you disappoint.
Yep.
You're always going to have to let somebody down. So let's go back to the original discussion around you're feeling excluded. Sometimes it's actually important to be excluded because you know that you're going to have to let somebody down or you're going to have to deprioritize something. So the key takeaway for me from what you've just talked about, it's just reminded me that when I took on one of my more recent leadership roles across Asia Pacific, there were things on fire everywhere. And that's not unusual. There's always stuff on fire.
There's always something on
fire. Whether it's across different countries or whether it's across different teams, there's always something on fire, and you have to choose which fire will I put out first or focus on first that's going to have the biggest impact and outcome. So I had people screaming at me, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have to keep the lights on and stay connected and keep moving forward. But you just can't solve every problem all at once.
No, you can't solve them all. And this goes back to maybe your favourite leadership principle around, disagree and commit.
Have backbone,
disagree and commit. Because I think you can do it in two ways, and I've done it the right way sometimes, and we've all made mistakes. I've done it the wrong way sometimes. But when you think about how many fires do I have to put out, or where do I want to grow my business, and you're going to disappoint someone. But you can disappoint them in a way that they understand. And I can sit down at a peer group and say, hey, look, I don't have the staff or I don't have the time to go and help you in your market right now. I'm going to prioritise it for 12 months.
So to wrap up, we could talk about this forever we could keep telling stories. But reflecting back on your journey so far, what are the key takeaways?
My key reflection, especially for those looking to either move up in leadership or begin the journey to becoming a leader, I think the first part is knowing what you want. Saying I want to be a manager is great, but a manager of what and how do you want to get there? The biggest challenge you're going to have moving from an IC to a leadership is soft skills. So what's your plan to get there? Then you can start self-advocating, and not just advocating for yourself saying, hey, I'm really awesome. It's going to be saying, hey, I've delivered these things. I've taken these extra responsibilities on. So get the plan, start self-advocating, then find your next peer group and mentorship group. I think that's probably the first three things I would bite off as you're either trying to move up in leadership roles or begin a journey as a leader.
So look, thank you so much for your time, Michael.
No worries,
I've learned a few things, and hopefully people listening have taken away some
good nuggets.
Some good advice. Some good nuggets of advice. So how can people get in contact with you if they're interested in following you on LinkedIn or what?
Follow me. I'm always super active on LinkedIn and travelling so much. There's always a photo of me in India or somewhere in Southeast Asia, and there'll be lots from summits across APJ now. Follow me on LinkedIn. We've got the Nutanix Cloud Interlock podcast. It's been a lot of fun where we chat about things like this. We're talking about how to do digital transformation and look after disruption. So follow me there. Give us a shout out. If you need some career advice, I'm always happy to chat to people. So send me a message. I drink lots of coffee, so we can make it easy. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries, Wendy. Thank you.
Cool. Enjoy Summit.
Oh, yes. It's going to be lots of fun.
I will cry. I will hide. I will